Yes, there were exactly 57 people massacred. And now we go live with Freeman Dyson and Theodore Taylor at NASA to talk about the revolutionary Project Orion.
This is an ABC News special report.
Thank you guys so much for coming out with us.
Our pleasure.
So why don't we get right into it? So, the question I believe all viewers want to know is, how'd you come up with such an amazing story? Here you go.
Great question. It's a funny story because it actually comes from an accumulation of things from my childhood. From a young age, I was already interested in chemistry, and my passion only grew more as I continued to experiment and explore. After redirecting paths multiple times, from skipping grade levels to undergoing various challenges, I found myself at Los Alamos in New Mexico, where I worked on fission bombs, those fueled by plutonium or uranium-235, creating both the smallest and largest fission bombs known at the time. Eventually, I was awarded my PhD from Cornell. I then transitioned to working at General Atomic, where I focused on designing nuclear reactors. There, I created TRIGA, a small reactor that was meant to produce radioactive isotopes for medical use. In case of failure or danger, it was made to be tamper-proof and could shut down immediately if needed. However, once again, the trajectory of my career and outlook changed when I realized that nuclear explosions could be used to power spaceships. This is when Project Orion was born. Despite the fact that at the time no one really believed something as dangerous as a nuclear weapon could have the ability to propel anything in space without destroying it, I had done the math and knew it could be done. Here's when I reached out to Freeman, and work began. With safety in mind, the idea was for Project Orion to quickly project and explode tiny plutonium bombs behind a spaceship with a thick shield or pusher plate at the back, so it can absorb the explosions and convert the energy to thrust.
Wow, that's really amazing. What would you say your specific role in Project Orion was?
I would say the creator or leader of the project, but definitely could not be done without the rest of the team.
That's very interesting. How did you know your decision to focus on Project Orion was the right decision?
Well, as I mentioned, I think it was just a part of the journey. I had realized the gap or loop in the system, and I wanted to do my best to address it. Although it didn't end up working out, it was for a good cause and still made an impact in the history of nuclear explosions.
Love your response. I see. If you put it like that, I think everyone would have made the decision you did. Just so people understand the project, could you describe how it worked?
Of course. Project Orion was supposed to help astronauts go deeper into space because of nuclear pulse propulsion, which is essentially a theory where the force from nuclear explosions helps propel forward a spacecraft because of the sheer amount of power that is released from the explosion. However, spacecrafts would need multiple pushes, one after another, to keep going forward, which means that there would need to be a series of nuclear bombs to go off. While it seems simple, there are various dangers that could come with this, as nuclear explosions can go out of proportion or may not be controlled. This is why Project Orion focused on using nuclear pulse propulsion theory, but in a controlled manner. So, to put how it worked into perspective, Project Orion used multiple but smaller nuclear bombs that would go off in a series to continue ejecting the spacecraft, while the bombs were enclosed by a pusher plate. The pusher plates are made with shock absorbers, so when the bomb detonates, the energy will create a plasma shockwave by vaporizing against the pusher plate. Then the plasma shockwave will be absorbed by the spacecraft and slightly recoil before being propelled forward from the force created. As mentioned before, there will be multiple of these small bombs, so the process will repeat and the spacecraft will continuously be launched forward.
Wow, that is very fascinating. I can't believe you and Freeman were able to create such a brilliant invention. Now then, let's move on to hear and Freeman Dyson.
So, Freeman, what was your take on Project Orion?
I think that Project Orion is a brilliant project. It would have helped the world see the wonders and depths of space. I really enjoyed working on the different aspects and sciences of the project, though my time there was as short as it was. All of it was just so interesting.
Very interesting. Moving on, why did you decide to leave Princeton for a year to work on Project Orion? Was it more of a risk or completely thought out?
Actually, it was Ted who convinced me to join the project. I would say that the science field, especially nuclear chemistry, is full of taking risks, so taking risks is just part of the job, and I don't regret taking this risk. I thought that Project Orion was a great project to work on to help make new discoveries. But I ultimately returned to Princeton to continue my career then.
Okay, so you were the co-leader of this project?
More of a contributing physicist in the beginning stages.
Okay, so what's your take on using nuclear propulsion for this project?
I think that using nuclear pulse propulsion, which was based off of nuclear fission, to create Project Orion was a necessary action to take to achieve Project Orion. Using nuclear fission meant we would have 3 million times the energy produced as coal by mass. Yes, nuclear energy does have its cons, like harming the environment, but nuclear fission was the only way possible to produce power for Project Orion, and the goal of traveling as far into space as theorized.
I see, that makes sense. It's amazing how Project Orion would have turned out to be. How did you want this project to impact the world?
I wanted Project Orion to help the world to see the depth of space, as well as the usefulness of nuclear energy in physics. If Project Orion had worked out, then we as a society would have been able to explore more about our place in, in the universe and other wonders of space.
Right, and did the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty of 1963 disappoint you?
Of course, I mean, after the Air Force and NASA had dropped their fundings from the project, Project Orion had to be closed. It really had so much potential, and everything in the plan would have worked, so it's a real shame that it had to end.
How fascinating. Thank you so much for your time, Freeman.
Anytime.
Thank you guys so much for coming out.
Thanks for having us. This is Reba Bunsel from ABC News signing off with my associate,
Hereby is
Ted Taylor and Freeman Dyson. Oh fuck.
Almost. Oh, sorry.
More of a contributing physicist.